The views expressed on this broadcast of the Take 12 Recovery Radio Show do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting or its affiliates. KHLT and Take12Radio.com are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
Remember me, I'm the one down on the floor, telling these people that I ain't there no more. I'm calling in the street, just about to lose my mind.
Welcome to Walking Through the Big Book with Chris Schroeder and Monty Meyer. And now, here's those two guys who investigate prior to contempt, Chris and the Monty'man.
Little ominous sounding there. My friends, welcome to this week's Walking Through the Big Book with Chris Schroeder. I am your co-host, the Monty'man, and here we are, just back from the Florida Keys, the awesome Florida Keys. But I got to tell you guys out there in the Florida Keys, you could keep your humidity to yourself. Oh, man. But what a beautiful and fun time we had at the 12-Step Music Fest. It was awesome. It's good to be home. It's good to be back with you. We are at part 3 of How It Works. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Great, Monty, great.
We are in this chapter of How It Works, which is probably for those out there that have never read the Big Book or the Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. One thing that they have read is a great deal from How It Works. And this, some would say this is we're starting to get into the meat of this whole thing. What is your take? I mean, before we actually get to where we left off, what is your take on this chapter? Kind of a summary.
Well, this is the chapter where the specific directions start to be laid out. It talks earlier that the purpose of the book is to show others precisely how we have recovered. So in How It Works, Bill had to get to work showing precisely how we had recovered. You hear all the time, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed the path. Well, when you look at the chapter, How It Works, and then Into Action, those are really basically the two chapters that lay out what you need to do to thoroughly follow the path, what you need to do to recover from alcoholism. And
we are at...
Well, we're at the bottom paragraph on page 63 in
63,
How It Works.
Right.
Well, what we did last week, Monty, is we ended with the third step prayer.
Yep.
The third step prayer, and we talked about it being an affirmation prayer, about it, affirming a decision that we've made to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him, to basically start to live life along spiritual lines, to make a commitment to live life along spiritual lines. Alcoholism is our problem. Spiritual living is our solution as alcoholics. And what they've found from this book and what they've found in the 12-step processes is that when you do the things that they lay out in this book, when you're fearless and thorough, what happens is the result is recovery from alcoholism. There's a lot of misconceptions and there's a lot of bad information that you'll find in the support group meetings today. There's a lot of people who really are looking for easier, softer ways. They're trying to share their way sober. They're trying to attend meetings their way sober. They're trying to make coffee their way sober. And all of those things are really good, but it doesn't even come close to thoroughly following the path. It's not an AA program. What an AA program is do the things that are in How It Works and Into Action, actually do those things. And that's what an AA program is. And that's kind of become unpopular in some of the recovery rooms because people want easier, softer ways. It's more fun to sit in a circle and complain about how bad the day is. That's a lot more fun than actually taking inventory or going out and making direct amends. But it's not an AA program. So the treatment for alcoholism is certainly not sitting in a circle and complaining about your day and drinking coffee and putting $1 in the basket. That's not treatment for alcoholism. The treatment for alcoholism is actually doing what's in How It Works and into action.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like what we talked about before, like going into a classroom and never picking up the textbook, just showing up for class.
And sharing about the subject, having knowing little about it.
Well, and you know what, Chris? This is something today in a noon meeting. A very good friend of mine he's really on the same page that you and I are on when it comes to this program and following this and the book and so forth. And he said, we sit around here and we talk about how this applies to us or that applies to us or how we feel about this or that and what the book says here and gee, this I can do this and that, but we're not looking at what it says and actually doing the work. We're looking at the wall, seeing the 12 steps, saying I read them, therefore I comprehend them, and that's where we stop.
Somebody described the other day as the insanity that they talk about in the alcoholic insanity is basically being in a 12-step program and not taking the 12 steps.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a good explanation for alcoholic insanity. We will do anything. In the 12 and 12, it basically states instincts balk at investigation. When we're about to start looking at our instincts in step 4 here. Instincts balk at investigation. We'll do anything except the actual work of recovery, and it's crazy. But let's say you were diagnosed with lung cancer, and you go into the doctor, and the doctor says, "Well, it's really bad news. You're going to live anywhere between 6 months and 2 years. It's going to get progressively worse, and you're going to die a really bad death." I mean, that's basically what you could tell a low-bottom alcoholic. You could tell them the same thing.
Yeah.
And you go to the doctor. Well, doctor, isn't there anything? Isn't there anything? And they say, well, out in Eugene, Oregon, there's this clinical trial underway whereby there's 12 procedures, and everyone that's undergone those 12 procedures has recovered. So that's all I know.
Mm-hmm.
You would sell your house, you'd sell your family, you'd take a leave of absence from work, you'd get in the car and you would drive to Eugene, Oregon, and you would get involved. That would be your absolute highest priority, recovery from lung cancer, because you're going to die if you don't. And there would be an incredible sense of urgency. The thing with alcoholism is it's almost inherent in the illness, a lack of urgency. Yes, okay, I'm going to die an alcoholic death unless I get involved. And then you just barely get involved, and everything else in your life is more important. If we didn't have an alcoholic insanity, we would have a sense of urgency about these steps like you would not believe. We would take a leave of absence from work. We'd move out of the house because people are talking to us and getting in our way. And we would get about the business of going through these steps as thoroughly and as quickly as possible because we would have a sense of urgency. But with alcoholism, inherent in the illness is a lack of urgency.
Yeah.
It affects almost everybody. And I think that's why so many people die. There's a solution. There's a treatment for alcoholism. The problem is people don't take it. People don't take it seriously, and people don't actually do it. That's the big problem. So even in the 12-step fellowships, you find the majority of people not taking the steps. It's unbelievable. It would be like going to the hospital to get treatment for that lung disease, and instead of going into the operating room, sitting in the waiting room and talking to other people with lung cancer.
Yeah.
How's your lung cancer? Oh, my lung cancer. I've got problems with my lung cancer. You know what I mean? And not going into the operating room. Well, the operating room is the steps. Wouldn't you be crazy if you went to the hospital and just sat in the operating room?
You bet.
They would call out the psych unit on you. Hey, there's a guy who needs treatment from lung cancer in the waiting room. Well, believe it that the rooms of the 12-step fellowships are the waiting room. They are not the treatment for the illness.
Yeah, good point.
Treatment is in this book.
Very good point.
So I'm going to get started. We're going to pick up right after it says, we thought well before taking this third step and saying the affirmation prayer. We found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person, such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor. But it is better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. Remember, this book was written, they were expecting this book to be shipped out, and people were to find recovery by reading and doing what was in this book. Mm-hmm. So there was only 2 meetings when this book was written. One was in Akron and one was in New York. So they were giving you instructions to find somebody to do your 5th step with, not thinking that there's 12-step meetings and 500 available sponsors in your town like there is today.
Right.
The wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we expressed the idea, voicing it without reservation. This was only a beginning, though if honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once. Next, we launched out into a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us have never attempted. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Next, what does next mean? Next means the next thing, doesn't it?
Yeah. After completion of the thing before it.
Launched. I'm really good friends with an airline pilot, and I asked him one time, what does launch mean? He goes, Chris, launch means going from 0 to 200 in a matter of feet. That's what launched means. Launched means let not only next, but let's get going with some real momentum. So after you do the 3rd step prayer, we launch into. So you get up off your knees from the 3rd step prayer and you're writing inventory. That's basically what this is directing us to do. A lot of times, again, you hear, there's no time limit on the steps, and you take your time. You don't take the steps; they take you. You hear all kinds of crazy things today. What the book? I like to go back to the book. What the book is telling us is, right after making the affirmation prayer, next we launch out into a course of vigorous action, the personal house cleaning. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. I'm going to assume that this sentence is true. Though our decision in the 3rd step and our prayer is a vital and crucial step, it's not going to have any permanent effect unless you at once, right after the prayer, get involved in a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. And I'll say that that's not only the 4th step, but that's basically 4 through 9, because the process of 4 through 9 is about being rid of the things that are blocking us. And I don't think that truly happens until we're done with our amends.
Okay.
Our liquor was but a symptom, so we had to get down to the causes and conditions. How about that? Our liquor is only a symptom of alcoholism. It's
right.
Not a good one. It's a really bad symptom, but it's only a symptom. We drink because we're alcoholic. We're not alcoholic because we drink. Mm-hmm. We need to get down to the causes and conditions of our alcoholism. We need to see what's really going on. If it's not really the booze is just a symptom. What are the causes and conditions of my alcoholism? Why do I drink? Why do I have problems in my life? Why is my life unmanageable? Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking up commercial inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. When Bill uses construction references or business references in this book, you can be sure that the same exact set of circumstances or instructions are applicable to the spiritual recovery process. We need to be fact-finding and fact-facing about the things that are in our nature that are damaged, that are unusable, that are defective. We need to find out exactly what they are, and we need to then participate in the removal of those negative characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
We did the exact same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. Now, a lot of times the alcoholic still thinks that they can't be quite considered a failure. But let's look at it this way. Is your life all that you've wanted it to be?
Of course not.
Have you achieved everything that you've wanted? Are you truly happy? Is there serenity in your life? Are your personal relationships in order?
Right.
And if you say no, then you've failed at really what you wanted. Being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us, we considered its common manifestations. Selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of the alcoholic's problem. Being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us. Now, up to this point, the pages 1 through 63, if you're not convinced that self, the manifestation of self has been what your problem is, you need to not go on. You need to go back into the book and find out what you missed. What have you missed that you're still unconvinced? Because up to this point, it's given us enough ammunition to directly look at our own personal experience in our life, to come to the conclusion that selfishness and self-centeredness is what has defeated us. It's why we've failed at life. It's why we've got defective relationships. It's why we have all of our emotional difficulties. So one of the common manifestations of self is resentment. Resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. Notice that it doesn't say booze destroys more alcoholics than anything else. It says resentment does. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease. For had we've not only been mentally and physically ill, we've been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. So it's basically pointing us to what we need to work on. We need to work on our spiritual condition, because if we work on our spiritual condition, our mental and physical condition will come into place.
Mm-hmm.
So often we try to work on our physical condition. I know a million alcoholics that used to exercise like crazy because they thought that's how they keep in control or whatever.
Right.
And I know a lot of alcoholics who read all kinds of books and go to therapy and psychological counseling and everything. They're working on their alcoholism mentally, and that doesn't work either. You can't go to therapy and treat your alcoholism. You can treat your problems other than alcohol and find out a lot more about your human condition. But therapy is ineffective on alcoholism. Exercise is ineffective on alcoholism. However, working on your spiritual condition is not. That's how you overcome alcoholism.
Right. You don't go to your doctor for your spiritual advice. You don't go to your pastor to set your broken leg.
Yeah, exactly. Go to the right. Go in the right direction.
Right direction. Yeah.
In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. Okay, here's where the instructions start. How you use this book is when there's an instruction, go do the instruction. Don't keep reading. This isn't the Da Vinci Code. This is a textbook. So if it says put down your resentments on paper. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. Okay, stop. Do what it just said. List the people, institutions, and principles with whom you were angry. Don't go any further until you've actually done that. That's how you use this book as a textbook. We asked ourselves why we were angry. Okay, that's another instruction. Ask yourself why you were angry. Put that down next to the people, institutions, and principles. Don't go any further until you're done with that. In most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore. We were burned up. Okay, column number 3 is what does it affect? Where you get the information for column number 3 is in the sentence I just read. Self-esteem, pocketbook, that would be your finances, ambitions, personal relationships, including sex relationships, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore. We were burned up. Okay, think about this for a minute. You're angry at somebody. The only way you can be angry at a person, an institution, or a principle is if you think that something you have will be taken away, or something you want to get, you'll be interfered with. You won't be able to get what you want. So instincts basically are what I have, and I'm going to protect it. Ambitions are what I want to get. Now, if your instincts or ambitions are not harmed, threatened, or interfered with, there's nothing to be angry about. So this is basically an exercise in breaking down your resentment or your anger to see what areas of self are being affected. Is it your self-esteem? Is it your sex relations? Is it your money? Are they being harmed, threatened, or interfered with? Either what you have or what you want. Now, you're not going to have a resentment unless one of those things is affected. So the exercise is basically write it down. On our grudge list, we said opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal sex relations which had been interfered with? We were usually as definite as this example. Now, this is Bill's very rudimentary inventory that's broken down on page 65. And I'll go through some of these. I am resentful at, that's column number 2. The cause, column number 3. Affects my is column number, the cause is column number 2. Affects my is column number 3. Let's just look at Mr. Brown.
Okay.
I'm resentful at Mr. Brown because of his attention to my wife. That's one resentment. The second one is told my wife of my mistress. Okay, that's the second one. The third one is Brown may get my job at the office. I saw a shirt one time, Monty, that said, Mr. Brown needs his ass kicked. I love that.
That's cute.
Anyway, listen, if somebody was trying to hit on your wife, was telling your wife that you're having an affair, and then trying to get your job, you're going to be upset. Okay?
Sure.
Let's see why you're upset. It's affecting your sex relations. It's affecting your self-esteem. It's making you afraid. It's all of these things. If you look in column number 3, each one of these resentments, and there's basically 3 resentments: security and self-esteem, and sex relations, and fear are being affected. So that's how you do column number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at Mrs. Jones. Now, there's 2 ways he does this. It took me a long time to see. The first way, he says, I'm resentful at Mr. Brown, and then he lists 3 resentments, okay? In Mrs. Jones, he lists out what he's resentful at, and he only uses 1/3 column. So in the first example, he uses 3 different third columns. In the second example, he uses only 1.
Okay.
So if you have a resentment towards somebody and it's multiple resentments, you can either list out how it affects just once, or you can list out how it affects for each specific resentment, if that makes any sense.
Got it, yeah.
You have to look at this to say. Mrs. Jones, she's a nut. She snubbed me. She committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend. She's a gossip. Okay? That's why he's upset with Mrs. Jones. It affects his personal relationships, his self-esteem, and fear is bracketed. Okay? Let's look at my employer. My employer, the cause is unreasonable, unjust, overbearing, threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account. Why does it affect him? Because of self-esteem, fear, and security. And I would also add, Bill probably should have added pocketbook.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the fourth resentment, my wife misunderstands and nags, likes Brown, wants house put in her name. And in column number 3, what it affects is pride, personal, sexual relations, security, and fear. Now, notice that he didn't do a whole lot of writing. This is something that they would do very, very quickly back in the day. As a matter of fact, when Dr. Bob was taking you through the steps, he was writing out your inventory. He didn't even want you to do it, okay? When you see people doing 4th steps today, you see life stories, and they want to write down every detail. No, you don't need to do that. You just need sound bites. You need to get to the cause and condition. The more writing, the more justification you're going to put in there. The more you're going to be showing, well, this is really why I have this. If you look at this example, it's short, it's sweet. There's sound bites. He's getting right to the point. And that's a good lesson that should be learned as far as 4 steps. I've had people come over and do 5th steps at my house that were 18 hours long, Monty.
Wow.
I mean, they just didn't get it. You can get to the point with a lot less writing than some people use nowadays.
Don't you think, Chris, too, excuse me, that this could be somebody that's doing that much, writing these big novels, could be one of the causes for stirring up stuff that may have already been dealt with?
Well, I think it's a manifestation of ego.
Yeah.
I mean, the bigger the 4th step, the bigger the ego. Sometimes, like I got to show these people just how bad I am, or something. It can be that. It can be incorrect. Sometimes you really need to give people specific instructions before you send them off to do a 4th step.
Mm-hmm.
The first 4th step I ever did, the guy who was guiding me through said, "Go do a 4th step." He didn't give me any instructions. So I did a life story because I had learned that in treatment. I put down all this stuff. I told all this crap. That's not really what it's about. We're looking for the causes and conditions of our failure in life. We're not looking to justify it. We're not looking to do a dissertation on it.
Yeah.
We went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. So you need to be thorough and you need to be honest. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was that this world and its people were quite often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse and then we were sore at ourselves. But the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. If we have a resentment, it's like drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die.
Yeah.
It's eroding our spiritual condition, and we could drink and we could die. We need to be rid of these resentments. And if you're just so sure that you have a justified resentment, well, that's okay. You can have a justified resentment. You're just going to die.
Yeah.
I mean, would you rather be right or would you rather survive?
Sure.
So we need to be rid of these resentments. And the best way I've found is figuring out exactly what they are, finding out the truth about them, and then moving through the rest of the steps. It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile. Bonnie, I would wake up in the morning, okay? I would come to, and my head would come off the pillow, and I would start thinking about the people I hated. I would start to think about the people that did me wrong. I mean, that's how I would start my day. And
wow.
I'm telling you, that tarnishes your quality of life if you can survive it. But with the alcoholic whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. We found that it is fatal. There are no justified resentments, there are only fatal ones. For when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit, and it's the sunlight of the Spirit that keeps us safe and protected from the next string. The insanity of alcohol returns, and we drink again. And with us, to drink is to die. If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. Now, one of the great things when you're going through this book is to use a period dictionary, because the definitions of words change. I think grouch, everybody knows a grouch. That's just somebody that's cranky all the time. But a brainstorm back in the late 30s, one of the definitions was losing your mind emotionally. Like punching the holes in the wall, kicking the doors down, you know, driving around with road rage. That's a brainstorm.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, yeah.
They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things were poison. Now, we've done the first 3 columns, Monty. It now tells us we turn back to the list, for it held the key to the future. We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had the power to actually kill. I found fancied or real when I finally started writing out these resentments. I found out some of them were fancied. They were in my head. You know, the people weren't out to do me wrong.
Right.
How could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. This was our course. Now, before you move on to column number 4, this is what you need to do. We realized that the people who had wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way those disturbed us, like ourselves, they were sick too. Like ourselves.
Yes, that's the key. That is the key. And this, I have to tell you, Chris, this is the place this is the pages that are most worn in my book. This particular paragraph has saved my rear end so many times, has allowed me to continue my day after a seemingly bad experience and have the rest of a good day. It really, really has. And that's the thing I point out with my sponsees, is that very thing you said. They like ourselves. I think that is so key, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, you know, our problems are of our own making. So definitely we're spiritually sick. So, you know, here's basically how I explain it to somebody that's new. All right, when my daughter was born, I was in the hospital room with my wife at the time, and she was going through contractions, and the contractions started to get really, really bad. And finally, she went through a contraction from hell. And she looked at me and she started screaming at me. Monty, she said things to me like, this is your fault. I'm never going to let you touch me again. You're a this and you're a that and you're a this and you're a that. Okay, now, do you think I was mad at her?
No.
No, I wasn't mad at her. I was going, no, honey, breathe. It's okay. You know, doing the Lamaze.
Yeah.
I didn't take it seriously. I knew she was in unbelievable pain. I knew she didn't mean what she said. I think sometimes they're asking us to look at people as if they're spiritually sick, as if they're like my wife who was having a baby and was cussing at me with everything she had. You know, we're supposed to have some compassion. We're supposed to see that they're not all there. They're not spiritually sound. You know, and we should have compassion. We should look at them like they're sick people, and that's how we should react instead of getting resentful, believing that we're under attack.
Right.
Now, here's the prayer. Before you move on to the 4th column, you need to say this prayer. We ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. Okay. Now, when you have a resentment, this is the resentment prayer. All right, you figure out what areas of self are affected, why you're angry, and then you basically say, God, please show me how to be tolerant, have pity and patience on Harry. Harry is a sick man. How can I be helpful to Harry? Give him, God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done. I mean, it's a prayer that we need to learn and we need to start using when we get angry. Because these resentments must be mastered. Because why? They're fatal. Important reason. We avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. Referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done. There's a line of demarcation here now. Yes, you've looked at why you think you're angry and what areas of self are, but you've just said this prayer. Now you need to forget about their part. You need to look at your part. Referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Those are the 4 things you look for in column number 4 of the resentment inventory. And if you've been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, or frightened, you need to write it out. And that's how you do a resentment inventory. Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight. Now, I'll just give a plug to a couple of websites where, if you're listening to this and you're looking for a form or something, I mean, I don't really necessarily think you need a form to do a 4-step. You just write out what it tells you to write out here in columns. But on thejaywalker.com, you can find some good 4-step forms. And Just Love Audio. You can Google Just Love Audio. And Barefoot Bill, the guy who has that site, has a lot of good forms too. So if you need a pre-written form, you can find them there. If you can just take out a notebook and move through following these instructions, you can do that too.
Okay, so the jaywalker.com, and what was the other one?
thejaywalker.com. And the other, I'm not sure the exact URL, but if you do a Google on Just Love Audio, you'll find Barefoot Bill's site, and he's got a lot of different forms.
Okay.
Things like he's got a lot of good. Both of those sites have a wealth of written recovery material and exercises. We normally don't plug other websites, do we, Monty? Because we've got our own. But,
That's right.
I don't know about you, but I don't have 4-step forms on mine.
I don't either.
So that's the resentment inventory. Before we get off, Monty, you want to share some of your experiences with doing inventory on resentments, and how what your experience might have been?
Yeah, you betcha. When I found happening, it is so important, folks, to have a sponsor or somebody that has gone through these steps to really guide you through this stuff. I tried doing this by myself when I was in jail, going through the big book and trying to follow these directions. And, I mean, some people can do that, I suppose, but I didn't have any guidance. And so what I ended up having was a whole bunch of resentments towards myself by the time I got out of jail. I didn't know what to do with me.
Yeah.
And because everything that came up, everything I started writing down, I started doing it, well, this was my fault, and this was my fault, and and I went on, and I did that. I wrote that big old life story thing because I thought I was supposed to. Nobody really guided me, and I did have some experience in treatment. Of course, they're trying to cram in everything in a very short period of time, trying to condense it all. And I found myself, the reason I was unable to finish the 4-step at that time was because I had more fear and more fear. Oh my gosh, I'm not done writing. I'll never be done writing. And so I just gave up. And I think maybe that's why some people don't I'm still on my 4-step. You hear that all the time, right?
Oh, well, you know how long a 4-step takes, Monty? It takes about 2 weeks and 3 hours, or it takes about 2 months and 3 hours, or it takes about 2 years and 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you follow the book's instructions. So it takes about 3 hours for normal people. Some people may have more resentment through more sex harms than others, but I can say that it'd be surprising if you're just following these instructions. You can't do it in 3 hours. Yeah, and listen, there's something to say about life stories. There's something to say about doing a lot of writing.
You bet.
You get some good things out of doing those. It's like journaling or whatever. You get good things out of it. It's just, don't mistake that for working a program.
That's right.
If a treatment center tells you to write a life story, that's really kind of a first-step prep. It's not a 4-step. And you get out of those exercises what you get out of those exercises. The important thing to remember is what you get out of the 12-step exercises in the book Alcoholics Anonymous is to a state of recovered from alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of important because it's a progressively fatal illness.
The resentment inventory, I give you an example, and we've since reconciled and we have a good relationship today. But my brother-in-law, who introduced my wife and I through a blind date, after he got to know me a little bit, and after several relapses, he wished that he had never done that. And so I had become the black sheep. And there was an awful lot of anger there. And every time we got together for a holiday or anything, it was Steve it was all about, oh, that guy's going to be here. And, it was horrible. I could feel the tension in the room. You could cut it like a knife. And I became extremely resentful at Steve. And so when I did my 4-step, I actually sat down with a sponsor and did this resentment inventory. He was the first one on it, Chris. Uh-huh. And so the columns were very, very helpful to me. And I didn't have a form or anything, but I just drew lines down a piece of paper. So I could put Steve in there instead of Mr. Brown. The cause, the way he acted towards me when the family was together. And that was the times when he really, really just showed his ugly side. And of course, it affected my self-esteem. It affected, I'll tell you how it affected my pocketbook. When that kind of thing would happen to me in the past, and when he did that kind of thing to me, it rang those bells of abandonment issues. And I medicated by going out and buying stuff, what we call sometimes makeup spending. I would buy stuff to medicate. I wasn't going to drink, I can't do that. So I'll go buy stuff. Sometimes it was food, sometimes it was electronic toys, and I would try and do that to really forget about how he was treating me. Uh-huh. And so it did affect my pocketbook too. Somebody might not think so, but there's a way it did.
The causes and conditions of our failure at life. Sometimes we don't really understand what's going on with us. We're asleep thinking we're awake. And a lot of times we learn a lot from this. We learn a lot about ourselves.
And you know what else? And I don't want to jump ahead into something that we may be doing later down the road, but I've got to say, working the 4-step in the 12x12 along with this and understanding the things about sex relations and my pocketbook and so forth, and you and I know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And the very beginning of that, where it talks about our God-given instincts, that really helped me understand how I twist those things and take what God meant for good and try to bend it to my satisfaction. Yeah. But going back, today, and here's the other thing. This thing, once again, on the bottom of page 66 and going to 67, this resentment prayer, I'm telling you, I can go back to this thing sometimes on a daily basis. And I okay, Monty, 66, page 66, page 66. And remember that they, like myself, are perhaps spiritually sick. You know, and here's the thing. Sometimes people aren't sick. You know? Sometimes somebody really did wrong us, and we had nothing to do with it. And yet, it's still not healthy to blame. Even if it is totally in their court, it's still not healthy to blame, is it?
No. Absolutely not. Blaming somebody for something is not how you get free. Taking responsibility for your own part in it is how you get free.
Sure.
Listen, the book recommendation this week, Monty, I want to recommend the book called The Harder They Fall. It was written by Gary Stromberg, Jane Merrill. It's basically celebrities tell their real-life stories of addiction and recovery. And it's very interesting because I just want to read off a couple of the celebrities in here who tell their recovery stories. Anne Lamott, Jerry Cooney, the boxer, Richard Pryor, Mariette Hartley, Alice Cooper, Richard Lewis, Malcolm McDowell, Grace Slick, there's Glenn Beck, the broadcaster. Mm-hmm. There's a number of people in that book that tell their recovery story, and I interviewed Gary Stromberg not long ago, and he's an interesting guy. So that would be my book recommendation of the week.
That is excellent because I just spoke with Gary eyeball to eyeball a couple of days ago at the 12-Step Music Fest. He was our main speaker.
Oh, wow, that's terrific.
It was great, and he told us the story of Grace Slick, which I just found fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And, folks, this is an awesome book. I have a copy of it. I know you'll sit down with this thing, and you won't be able to put it down. And the author, boy, he's been through the ringer and talking with these people, getting permission from them. I think he said he only had one person or something that didn't give him permission, but everybody else, it was really good. But what a nice guy, huh?
Oh, amazing! And the crazy thing is some of the stuff that he was involved with, before he got involved in this book. He basically was a music marketing guy in the early days, and he worked with all of the big rock bands. Yep.
And that is Gary Stromberg, folks, in case you want to look that up. You can click on the link right here at take12radio.com on the book if you are on the Walking Through the Big Book page, and it'll take you right to Amazon, and a portion of that will go to help keep Take 12 Radio on the air. So, great book, great show. This, folks, is How It Works Part 3. We will continue next week with more of How It Works, and I think we'll probably be wrapping it up next week, right?
I think that we're going to get through fears and harms to others, emphasis on sex, yes.
Yeah, good going. And so don't let the sex inventory scare you, my friends.
Yeah, come back next week and we'll have sex.
Yeah, there you go. You too much, Chris. All right, my friend. Thank you so much once again, as always. You are the man.
Okay. Take care, Monty.
All right. Folks, hey, listen, check out all of our shows. But listen, don't forget to come back next week. And once again, we walk through the Big Book.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.